I live not far from here. I live in New Rochelle, and I frequently come down off the highway here and come down this street, down Columbus and down, what is it? I go down this street here, and I pass by this church. And I've always admired it. It's just a beautiful church, and I said, one Sunday I must go in and just have worship in it. And so that Sunday is here. I remember the day that we had the great storm, just not long ago, last month, and traffic was jammed, and it looked like your town had the worst traffic jam in the world. And I came down Columbus and I turned, trying to go down this way to the highway. I hope I'm in the right position. And I stood, my car was standing still for probably a half hour without moving. And I was right in front of the church. So I know what the outside looks like. And I know it's a beautiful structure, and today I had the opportunity to come in, and I was shown not only this room, but also your sanctuary. It's a very beautiful sanctuary. The Lord has blessed you richly, I'm saying. I want to talk to you about this passage of Scripture that was read. This is a passage of Scripture for this particular Sunday. This is the Sunday after Christmas. It's a special Sunday when we pay recognition of the fact that the three wise men came and brought their gifts to Jesus. They came not knowing the difficulty that they were going to be in, but they came and they went into Jerusalem, and in Jerusalem they sat before the king, and the king heard their story. And they said that we have come here to bring gifts to the newborn king. Of course, Herod was concerned about that because he was the king. And he liked the position that he had. He liked the power that was his. And if he thought that if there is someone else is to be king, he wanted to know about it. So that he sent out his folk to find out what they could find out about the child that is to be born to be king. So that's how that story goes. But the wise men who came were wise men not only because they could look at the signs that are in the stars and had wisdom in that area, but they were wise enough to see that the king could not be trusted. And so that they decided that they would go home another way. You know, it's always good to have more than one way to go home. When I was a young boy, and that was a long time ago, I had my favorite ways to go home, but there were some times when I would not take my favorite way, I would go another way to go home. It may have been because I wanted to avoid somebody, or I wanted to get home by way of seeing something else, seeing some other persons or some other scene. But I always knew that there was more than one way for me to get home, as a rule. But you know, when I was stuck out on this road here, there was no other way. There was no other way, they just wouldn't do it. And I just had to be patient and sit there, and finally it began to open up, and I went on down the avenue, right on into New Rochelle. That avenue in New Rochelle happens to be the street that I was born on 100 years ago. Right there, my father was a pastor of the AME Zion Church there at that time, and I was one of 5 children, and I was the only one that was not born in a hospital. I was born at home. So that's where we got that. But so that here we find this king who was trying to do whatever he wanted to do in order to avoid having to give up his kingship to a new king that he did not know or did not understand. But it is always good to have more than one way to get home. And it's not only something that I did in order to get home, but I'm sure that some of you have also known that in order to get home, that you need to know another way. Sometimes the way to get home to what you want, but home means that you have to get a good education. That you have to train your body, your mind, your whole being in order to really get to what you really know is to be your home. It may be the home of your dreams, or it may be the actual home that you have, but there is a reason for us to want to do that, to get home. Jesus was certainly there at that time for the men to see him, and they brought the gifts that they had. They put gifts before him. They paid him homage. They recognized him to be who he was. He was special, and they did what they did, and then they were ready to go back and to go home and to do what needed to be done. So that this morning, and it is still morning, the idea that I want to get across to you is that even though there may be obstacles placed in your way, if you have dreams, if you have plans, then you ought to be able to fulfill them and not be discouraged by anything that is put in your way. These men didn't want to put their lives up for stake. They wanted to get home, and they wanted to get home safely, and so they did. So that this whole idea of getting back home, of trying to do what needs to be done, is something that we all should care for, be concerned about. The gospel tells us many things about life itself, and tells us that just as these men were willing to come and to sacrifice their own lives on the journey and not know how it would come out, but that they had utilized whatever God had given them and had used those things that would bring them to where they were with the king at that time. They had their precious ointments. They were willing to share what they had. They didn't want to keep it for themselves, but they were willing to take the risk of the journey in order to give the very best things that they had to the king, not to the king, but to Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ is entitled to the best that we have, and that we need to be prepared to present to him our best selves that we have groomed, have been groomed for us, that we have worked with, and enabled us to be what we are today. So I'm here today to tell you that let's look and see what can be done. There is another story told about people a man who was supposedly be a fourth person. He missed the timing. He missed the meeting of the other three. It's the story of the other wise man. You probably know it. He had missed the meeting place because he had 3 gifts, and he had someone who was in need, and he was willing to share one gift to that person. Then there was another, as he journeyed on, he ran into another situation where there was one person that needed something, and he gave another gift to that person. And then he journeyed on further, and he saw someone else in need, and he gave that gift. And it says that he was late. He was not there when the others were there because he had stopped to take care of this person and that person and to do that person. And it seems as though he arrives at the end of his journey years later, and he's in Jerusalem, and there's a lot of excitement going on all around him. There's excitement. And people are saying to him, haven't you heard that Jesus Christ is being crucified? And so that he said that. But then he heard a voice saying unto him, that you have done this unto the least of people. You have given these gifts and you have given it to me as well. So that as we look at our own lives, as we look at our own gifts, not only are we giving gifts, a variety of sort of things, but we are giving gifts here in the church as we did today. We are giving gifts that go beyond this place in other ways. And we can also hear Jesus say to us that inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. So our idea is to really be able to give ourselves, to be our best, and to give that in the service of Jesus Christ. So you are here today, not just to come to hear and sing the songs of Zion, things of that song, that thing, but you're here because you want to give your witness, you want to give your gifts, all of the talents that you have in order to make this a better world, in order to make this a better community. This is what we are struggling to do, so that we can hear those words someday. Inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these, you have done it unto me. So whatever we do today, let it be something that's done unto our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Peace be with you.
Also with you.